Okay, so I'll just ramble on, I'd say, because it will be so long and things will just happen and definitely not properly all the way through. And I have to already tell you one thing. It will be a lot of fun for me because I enjoy these comparisons and that's why they are so long. Because whenever I get to compare more than just two things with each other, I can get into all the specific little differences. What I'm not gonna do in this comparison, because it's not a four-way review but a four-way comparison, is get into all the specifics about each and every headset. Because that's why I made the single reviews. So if you want to know a little bit more about one that you think is interesting, check that review. In this one, it's just about the differences. And what is this actually about? Well, it's quite easy. The four headsets that I'm going into right about in a few seconds are the four best in my opinion, or let's say my most favorite headsets that I've reviewed so far, that I can easily recommend all of them. But I also try to find a good balance for everyone, because the price difference is actually quite big, starting with the HyperX Cloud 2, which already are available for roughly 50 euros, but also to see what's kind of possible on the high-end level at around 300. And it's not that the Beyerdynamic maybe are the best ones here in this comparison, it's just to see of how they compare and if it's worth maybe 3 times more than the other ones. So yeah. So what are actually the contestants? Well, starting off in the order that I've reviewed them: the HyperX Cloud 2, the Sennheiser GSP 300, the MMX 300 from Beyerdynamic version 2, and the just recently reviewed HyperX Cloud Alpha. Like I said, I can easily recommend all of them. So let's talk about price for a second. These usually 60, 70 bucks, but sometimes available for 50. I can already tell you that these offer the kind of best value. The Sennheiser GSP 300, also now available as the 302 or 303 for consoles, is a little bit more expensive, roughly maybe 80, sometimes 100 euros. I still think they offer a great value and you have to know a few more things, but they definitely are well worth it. But they are a little bit different than at least these two. Now then, at roughly 300 euros, we have the MMX 200. And yes, these are the best ones you can get out of these bunch, and pretty much the best right now on the market. But we'll talk about the differences to see if it's really worth the extra price. And then the just recently reviewed HyperX Cloud Alpha. So let me just start off with a quick tour around them. And I'm not going into all the things that you get with it, because just in terms of that, you should just check my review, because you get cables usually and all the things that you would need. So let's start off with the HyperX Cloud 2. Design, you can see it. I definitely like it. It's built very nice. Absolutely no issues at all. It's very comfortable, softly dampened everywhere. The ear cups are big enough. They are very smooth and soft. Really well done everywhere. Nothing is sharp. This mechanism also is actually quite solid, so it doesn't really change as easy as on the HyperX Cloud Alpha. The rest is nice. We have a detachable microphone, which is always a good thing, but we can't replace the cable, so that one is fixed. A little bit more about the comfort later. So let's get into the Sennheiser GSP 300. Those look a little bit weird because they're also made for kind of like VR goggles, so they have a little bit more space. So they definitely look the weirdest out of the bunch. They also have steps, and those definitely don't change. It's mostly just plastic, and they definitely feel the cheapest of this bunch, but it's a good plastic. I don't really see this to be an issue. I have them for quite a while now since their release, and they feel just about as the same. Now we have a volume wheel, but I think it's just too loose. It feels very nice in terms of friction, like a fluid head on a tripod, but it's a little bit too loose. Microphone is fixed, but it can actually be turned on and off if you can hear flip this switch. It's also not really changeable in terms of mouth length, but more about that in the microphone part. The cable is fixed. There is the 350 version that is detachable, but it's 7.1 and also a little bit more expensive, so I'm not going into that. Now, the next ones, the MMX 300. They look like pretty much every other Beyerdynamic, so very industrial design, but as you can see, a very similar kind of shape actually, just circular ear pads instead of oval ones. Also super nice soft padding, actually a little bit too soft, or let's say unnecessary soft on the top, because nothing will touch here, but here super soft. Nice materials, very well done, feel very robust. They do clicker a little bit due to the movements, the movable parts, but that's fine. Here as well, not a detachable mic like on the Sennheiser as well. So it's fixed, which is a bummer for a few people, but I don't really mind it, because once I usually put them like that, I don't really mind them. It's very flexible. Yeah, and more about that later on. Ear cups, absolutely top, because these are actually the only velour ones besides, of course, the optional ones on the HyperX Cloud 2 They are big enough, nothing touches. They feel a little bit harder, which is good though. And yeah. Now, HyperX Cloud Alpha, very similar to the HyperX Cloud 2. A little bit thicker, softer padding actually on the top. Build quality is just about as fine. This mechanism is a little bit loose, a little bit more loose, but it shouldn't be an issue. Maybe it's just also on my unit, but it's fine. Ear cups, big enough, very soft, everywhere. So let's just talk about the comfort. And what I'm going to do is actually give you the rating right now in terms of first place and second place and such. So, and just to be clear, a fourth place doesn't mean bad. Absolutely not. It's just of this very high level, the worst ones. So about comfort, this is very subjective, and that's why this is a little bit of an optional thing, because I think for most people the Sennheiser would be that, because I think they are very comfortable. I have no issues at all with them, because the ear cups are big enough, they're very soft. Yes, leather, so a little bit sweat will be going on. They look a little bit weird, but comfort-wise, no complaints at all. Some people say that the clamping force is too much, but then it would be the case on all of these, so I don't think so. The shape is good. Hours and hours fine. Yes, build quality is maybe a little bit weaker, but everything else, so no complaints here at all. Absolutely not. But maybe I would put these on the fourth place, maybe, because here is where I'm not quite so sure if it's these or these as the last place, because these are great, comfortable as well in every aspect. But just to keep it short, for some reason, I actually think the HyperX Cloud 2 are just a tad little bit better in terms of fit. Because kind of different shape maybe of the headband that just feels a little bit more right on my head. Like I said, super comfortable on both. And these have the option, and that's why they are second place, for a velour pad, which is very important for many gamers. Because I always hear, can they breathe and such, which with the leather pad isn't the case. I personally prefer the leather case in this case, even though the velour one definitely won't heat up so much, but I think the seal is just way better here, and it's still just a little bit more comfortable and overall. So these get my second place, and this now could be debatable that these are the most comfortable ones, but I'll just give it to that because of the factor that if I put them on, they just give me out of the box already velour, so it won't heat up. The isolation is also quite good, but they just feel over a longer period of time, I think, the best ones, because super soft headband, very big in terms of ear size, and this will be generally the most easy one to recommend for people who maybe just don't like something. Okay, yeah, clamping force, that's a little bit harder, and the ear pads are a little bit harder, but I think it gives you the most space in your ears, so breathing will be the best. But I get that some people might say these are uncomfortable just because of the high clamping force. But I personally think once you have them properly on, with so much space around, I really like them. But like I said, all of these are superb when it comes to the comfort. I really like all of them. Isolation, I would say, is very similar to all of them. Not really enough difference that it would make us, because all are closed. So, yeah. The next thing that I actually took quite a while of time to get the differences out is the microphone. Just real quick, because you won't really be able to see that. On the HyperX Cloud 2, it's a flexible arm. Top. On the Cloud Alpha as well, and also on the Beyerdynamic, but not removable, which it is on the Hypers. On the Sennheiser, you have this fixed one, which also isn't changeable. But what's about the actual quality to say is what you will see in the demo. So this will be quite a long part, actually, even in comparison with my own mic. So I'll see you in a few minutes.
And this would be the microphone test of the HyperX Cloud Alpha. To be completely honest with you, I expected a little bit more from what I've heard other people saying about it. Because what I like definitely is the flexible arm, because you can position it very well wherever you need it to be, and you can get quite close to your mouth. And the closer you get, the little bit more body you will get to the sound, even though it doesn't make such a difference, like for example on the Beyerdynamic MX300 or such, but it definitely helps. But if you get too close, of course, you could get some kind of breathing noises, which actually sound very natural and not over the top like you will see right now. And even P sounds are still absolutely fine. One thing that you might maybe hear, I'll try to simulate it, is the cable, but usually that should not be an issue. But the thing that I just don't think is that good is the actual quality, because it sounds a little bit tilly, also a little bit hollow. Overall, the sound is quite clean, and in terms of background hiss, You can see that it is quite good because it's quite a sensitive mic, and it will definitely, don't get me wrong here, be absolutely fine for all sort of multiplayer games because people will hear you absolutely fine, but it's just not quite on the high quality level because it could sound just a little bit more high quality, like I said, the tinniness and such on. But otherwise, let's see what it picks up in terms of keyboard noises. And the mouse. So as you can see, it picks them up quite a lot, so not a lot of noise cancellation here, but I guess this is pretty much unavoidable on most headsets anyways. So that's it about the mic. This now would be the microphone of the HyperX Cloud 2, and I've heard a lot of bad things about it, and back then when I reviewed it I actually didn't have the same recording device and didn't feel so good about it either, but I have to say now, having it side by side in comparison with all the other ones, it actually sounds quality-wise better than I expected. The good thing is still that it's detachable and it's very flexible, can be brought quite close to your mouth, which though comes with one issue. Once it's too close or in direct path of your kind of breathing, then it will pick up quite a lot of peace sounds and breathing noise, as you can hear. The background noise is absolutely good, as you can hear right now with some silence. And also the cable does not really get picked up a lot. The only thing, as I have said, is that it picks up a little bit too much of those kind of P sounds and so on. But otherwise, just in terms of quality of my voice, it's maybe not super rich since I have to keep it a little bit further off, a little bit off axis below my mouth, so to kind of get rid of the biggest amounts of those breathing noises. But the quality itself sounds quite clean, and actually, just in terms of quality, a little bit more kind of high quality compared to the HyperX Cloud Alpha. Overall, the HyperX Cloud Alpha does a better job just because it can be just put up closer to your mouth, which gives it a little bit of a kind of advantage in that regard. But the quality of your voice actually is better than on the HyperX Alpha, even though this sounds very hard to believe. Now, what about picking up keyboard sounds? Let's try that. And now the mouse. So as you have heard, the microphone actually isn't as bad as many say it is. So this would be now the microphone test of the Sennheiser GSP-300. I can already tell you that it is a very good microphone, even though it has maybe like two downsides, which one of them would be that the microphone isn't removable, and the second thing is that it's just not flexible and you can't really get it closer to your mouth, which I expected to be a little bit of a downside, but it's actually not that much. One thing that is good, once you flip it down, it turns automatically on. Once you flip it up, it turns automatically off, which is quite handy. But the quality itself, I have to say, despite being a little bit on the muffled side, it produces a very clean sound because I will show you silence, I will show you breathing noises, P sounds, and also the cable, and then I'll let you know a little bit more. But let's start with some silence. Now the cable sound. Some breathing noises. And some P's. So as you can already hear, it's a very nice high quality sound. Like I said, a little bit on the muffled side, which you could maybe even change if your sound card allows that. But none of that changes the fact that it is a very high quality sound, a very nice balanced sound. Your voice is still quite rich. I expected it to be a little bit on the thin side since the microphone is actually quite far away, but it's not in your view. So all good points here. Now let's see what it shows up in terms of sounds when it comes to the keyboard. Yeah, and here it actually shows that it doesn't pick it up that much as some other ones. So, like I said, really good, if not even actually very good without any issues. And one of the better ones definitely for this price class. And this now would be the microphone test of the Beyerdynamic MX300. And to get to the point right from the start, if you're looking for pretty much the best gaming headset microphone on the market, then this is it. Because on the negative side, the only thing that I would have to point out is that the microphone is not removable. But otherwise, due to the very flexible arm, you can position wherever you want to, and the closer you get to your mouth, the more body your actual voice will get, and this noticeably more than on some other headsets, and you will just get an overall cleaner, better, more high quality, richer and better sound of your voice. Now, what also gets picked up actually quite little is P noises and background noise and things like, for example, breathing sounds. So let's just try that. and some silence. And here's what you could roughly hear the cable, which is also minimal. So I gotta say, quality-wise, it's absolutely top-notch, and just about how it would turn out with some keyboard sounds. And the mouse. So I guess this demonstrates it very well. This is an absolutely high quality, absolutely great microphone. And if you want the best, this is kinda it.
And just in case you're wondering of how an actual high-quality standalone XLR microphone would compete with these gaming headsets, this now is my AKG C214 hooked up to my Focusrite 6i6. And even though the microphone is noticeably further away with a bit over 30 centimeters compared to the few centimeters of the gaming headsets, I think the difference is very, very obvious. You get a lot more quality. The sound in general is just so much clearer, cleaner, richer. There is just so much more body to your voice, and you get in general a lot more details. And obviously none of these gaming headsets can compete, but gaming sounds actually might be a little bit of a different thing. So let's just see about silence. Now some breathing. P sounds. And obviously there is no cable, so let's just see what the keyboard would sound like. And the mouse. And I gotta just tell you that if you maybe plan on streaming and want the best possible sound, you still need a dedicated standalone microphone. But if it's just for multiplayer gaming online, all of these gaming headsets in this comparison will do just fine. Believe me, no problem here at all. Okay, we are back. I know the demos were quite extensive, but I think they covered everything very well. So to give you my kind of rating, I would actually, and this is what the demo said a little bit different. I said that the HyperX Cloud Alpha win over the HyperX Cloud 2, but this is somewhere where I maybe give a draw, because the HyperX Cloud 2 feel a little bit thinner and are way more sensitive to P sounds and also breathing noises. So that's why I kind of get why people say it's not the best quality, but with a good quality recording device, as you have seen, it's a very clean sound, at least from your voice. Now the HyperX Cloud Alpha, they maybe don't pick up those sounds, breathing noise and similar things nearly as much, and they kind of make them a little bit more less distinctive, but the quality of the sound just wasn't as clear, not as clean. So depending on what's more important for you, if you just want people to hear you, it will be absolutely fine, and if you don't want them to hear the breathing noise and such, then you have to kind of decide which one is the next place for you. The Sennheiser definitely second place, because even though it's a little bit weird in terms of positioning, because it's quite far apart from my ear, from my mouth, it provides you the second best sound of these, because it's just that it doesn't pick up those background noises so much. It's clean, even though it sounds a little bit muffled, but the quality of the voice is very good. And if you could maybe with an equalizer change it, but yeah, it's really good. Now, obviously, actually significantly the best would be the MMX 300, because you can position it quite close to your mouth, and the closer you get without being too close, where it then picks up a little bit of these P sounds and also these breathing noises, it provides most body to your voice. It's very clean, almost no kind of background noise or anything, and yeah, typical noises are there, but that's not avoidable, but it's nicely positionable. So yeah, and my own microphone, like I said, it's the best in terms of quality by far, but also as the whole package costs multiple times more than just the headphones themselves. So let's just forget that and talk about the next thing, gaming. And this will now be a surprise for many. And I actually would have to make a separation between action games, like for example, like Doom, where we want a lot more bass than some other games, like for example, Counter-Strike, where you need all those small little details. Because when it comes to, let's start with action games, then I would say the last place, but just a little bit. No, actually, no, sorry, the Hyper Cloud Alpha, because they have 4 games, the least amount of bass and footsteps. You didn't hear so much, but I'll go into that later. But this was the least impressive, spectacular sound experience for gaming. It is still top, don't get me wrong. Otherwise, like I said, these wouldn't be in this comparison, because all of them are great and there are minor differences, but it's about these differences. And if I would actually put these on the 4th place, because what the Cloud 2 does better is actually the distinction is a little bit bigger. You have more dynamic range because you get way more oomph of the bass and effects, for example, like gunshots and explosions and such, but still hear all the footsteps. On the HyperX Cloud Alpha, it's like all on a similar level, so nothing is really a lot louder than on the other ones. So that one I'd actually give a step up above that. Now the Sennheiser, they have one thing going for them. It's the bass and the actual, for some reason, I don't even understand how they managed to do that, is of how they emphasized effects. Because if you have these on and play Doom, you get so much more bass, at least more emphasized bass than on all the other ones. And it's still a high quality, punchy bass with actually quite a good extension towards the lower end, provides you enough details and so on. Yeah. Where it maybe falls short a little bit is maybe if you need some precision later on. But you hear footsteps very loud, but also action. So in case you just want to hear everything very loud, maybe not quite as precise in terms of location, these are great. Now, why these win? Even though maybe the more spectacular experience would be on a Sennheiser, just because the bass is a little bit more detailed, a little bit more structured. It just extends a little bit further. Even though I have to say, for some reason, it feels like sometimes if you have something with a lot deep bass going on, that they kind of seem to distort. But that's actually a bass that you don't even hear on the other ones, because this just goes deeper, which is an odd thing. But definitely impressive, but still with all the details and the cleanest overall experience. So great all around, which actually leads me already to the next thing for gaming when it comes to footsteps and things like Counter-Strike, locating people. So, just about location, I'm not quite sure which I should prefer, because you can hear footsteps and gunshots a lot louder and a lot more distinctive on the Sennheiser GSP than you can on the Alpha. But on the Alpha, there is just, since there is not so much dynamic range, and it's sound set is similar, even though it feels even smaller on the Sennheiser. These don't do anything particularly better, because even though you hear footsteps not all that loud and gunshots also not, it's just missing the kind of spectacular flair, but you hear everything very well. What the Sennheiser just do is you hear footsteps a lot easier, but locating them, since the soundstage seems very cramped in, it's a little bit harder to get in terms of distance where some things are. This is a little bit better, but without, of course, the oomph on the Cloud Alpha. Now, the Cloud 2, they balance this amazingly well for this price range, because you get a nice amount of action, nice amount of bass, and a very nice dynamic range. Better dynamic range than on a GSP, but not quite as loud footsteps or gunshots, but you hear footsteps very nice, and my camera screwed up once again. So yeah, this delivers effects, also footsteps, and the locating and distance is about on par with the Alpha X. So that's why it's just a little bit ahead. Now these, when it comes to locating, and my camera really just freaked me out, does something I've not experienced on any other headphone. Of all the other headphones or headsets that I've reviewed, I've never once encountered what I had with these. Because you don't just hear exactly where an opponent is, but you can, for some reason, even feel the room around it. This is the only headphone that I've heard, because something like the Monolith M1060 should provide you also this very great imaging. But there, I noticed distances very well, and I noticed where they are coming from. But only on these, I felt like I would kind of feel the end of the room. And every time there was an opponent on the other side of the room, I could definitely already feel, this is the weird thing, if he's next to the wall, or if there is one wall between, or wherever exactly. And you could really, in your head, have an image of where he is, and this is exactly where he was. And that was kind of so unique. And if you want a headset that definitely gives you an advantage, an upper hand when it comes to locating your enemies in games, this one is it. All the other free ones just have a little bit of a different experience of how you hear things and how you are able to locate things. But in terms of how good you are, because I actually play all the games without the radar when it's for reviewing the headphones, because I just want to go on locating enemies based on audio. And these, These kind of paint a map in my head so I exactly know where things are going up. And this is the main reason why you would get these over any of the other ones, because with all the other ones you are just about as good as you usually are. But with these, I actually believe what I'm saying, you will be better, because this was the only game that I've played pretty much every time an 8-0 round on Counter-Strike, just because I had this kind of advantage over the other ones, which is very, very, very unique. And my camera finally got a hold of itself. So sorry for these kind of changes, but I think I should return the camera. It has an issue. So now about music. I'm gonna try to filter out the best all-rounder now. Let's start at the 4th place. I think for the most balanced sound, these would be the weakest ones, because what they definitely have is the smallest soundstage, great isolation though and so on, but they are great for bass heavy music because they have noticeably more emphasized bass and a lot of punch and a nice oomph. And dubstep and any electronic music, you will enjoy a lot of these, but these are maybe not quite as good for rock, ballads or anything where you need a lot of details, because the highs compared to all the other ones feel a little bit muffled. You could change it in the equalizer, and if you want a more pleasant, more fun sounded experience, these are still great. And even though, like I said, at the 4th and noticeably different, or let's say heavier sound or fun sound focused, these are still very, very nice. Now the next ones, and this will come to a surprise to many, are the HyperX Cloud Alpha. Now why? Super similar soundstage. In terms of bass, very, very similar. The only thing that I'm missing here is a little bit of high end that I got on these. So a little bit more clarity here. These have a tiny little more definition. They are absolutely great. And without a direct comparison, it would be very hard for me if I wouldn't have done A/B tests with all of them all the time for such a long time to notice these differences. Then you wouldn't notice. And like I said, if you want just an amazing all-rounder, these are great because they are very nicely balanced. They have a little bit more bass and highs, but overall, they work for everything. Of course, you won't get quite the amazing oomph since they just don't extend so much in the bass, but there is still enough clarity. And that's obviously something that comes down to your own personal preference. I like highs. I like them a lot. And the more I have until the point where it gets too much, I prefer that. And that's pretty much the only reason why I would prefer the Cloud X and the Cloud Alpha 2 over the Alpha, because they have this slight little more clarity, slight little more open airy soundstage with that little tiny bit more highs that I prefer. But like I said, this is like a difference of a few percent, not really more. Now, the main reason why these win is just quality. It felt to me like when I compared all these three with this one, that I've listened to a lower bitrate on the other ones. It felt like going from 192K over to FLAC or something like that. I think the difference is maybe even bigger, because especially vocals sounded super crystal clear on these. Yes, maybe sometimes the highs can be a little bit too much, and maybe the vocals aren't quite as emphasized as on some other ones, because that's not quite as separated as I would like to, because I think a little bit more mids would be nice. But bass extends way deeper than on the rest. It's way more structured. You feel way more layers of depth, which you just on the other ones are pretty much, let's say, three sorts of bass: the lower bass, the mid bass, and the high bass. And here we have a lot more layers in between, so you get a lot more details in the bass part. It's a lot more of a cleaner, detailed, drier, just more punchy, just more high quality bass. The mids maybe don't shine so much, but that's what they actually easily lift up with the clean vocals. Really top notch. And you just notice this. And if you want a great headset, also very well for music, yes. Of course, you could focus for something very specific just for music and just for headset, but if you want a great all-rounder, this one's it. So what I'm going to do now, not to make the video too long, is make an overall. But this, of course, now includes a lot of my subjective opinion, because in the overall rating, I can't just say this one is better, because it includes a lot of my own factors. So I would say what I think for most will be the weakest ones in general, even though for some things it definitely is even better, is the Sennheiser. It has the second best microphone, which is important for a lot of people. It has a great comfort, even though it was 4th place. Like I said, this doesn't mean much. It's just not quite as balanced because it's a little bit too much on the action focus side. So if you want the kind of action, the best for action games, not pay too much, then this one, because it gives you the most satisfying, spectacular experience, but you just won't get quite all the highs, not quite as clear, a little bit of a smaller sound stage, and not quite as all the details, even though, like I said, footsteps and such are very easily to hear, very loud for some reason. They kind of manage to boost those frequencies very, very well, like it would have been optimized for that. So this is where I'm standing. Now, for the next thing, as an overall, I have to include also the price. And I'm gonna put the Cloud Alpha on the 3rd place, just because they cost about twice, or let's say at least 30-40 bucks more than the HyperCloud 2, and they don't really do much better. Yes, detachable cable, a microphone that picks up less extra noises, but therefore just doesn't have the quality. It's not quite as thin though. The comfort is pretty much the same, and the overall sound characteristics are 95% the same, and especially for games and music, I actually preferred them on the HyperX Cloud 2. So don't get me wrong, this is a super strong fight. But with the price, this one definitely stands above it. Don't get me wrong. Easy recommendation. Because it wouldn't have been otherwise in this comparison, and for the price you get still a great overall device. No flaws, which is important. But then there are the Cloud 2. Of course, microphone could be debatable very much. And yes, I've said when I reviewed these that this is my favorite headset ever. And I've reviewed these before, and now it's kind of 4th against 2nd place. But this is also something that just changed with time. Now that I've reviewed at least 30 more headphones in between all of these since I've reviewed them, I just have also, not just that my opinion changed, but my listening experience changed. Back then I liked more bass, I liked more oomph and all that, and the games that I played just were nicer with these action-packed games like Doom and such. But now, where I'm focusing more on neutrality, more of a balanced sound, I just like these a little bit more. But that's the only thing. But these, comfortable. The microphone, depends if you like it or not. You could still always use a mod mic or something like that, but overall, really, really good, especially for its price. It's just the winner in terms of value, absolutely the Cloud 2. Now, this will be a little bit hard to explain and for some people to understand that this at around 300 euros is roughly, I would say, 3 times more than the next closest thing or a little bit more. And yet, I will tell you, you should maybe consider buying these because they are not just better in every aspect, but especially when it comes to gaming, the location, the pinpoint precision, the ability to have an image of the room in your head with the opponents is what could be the triggering factor for you to jump on these. Because none of the other ones, from what I've heard, gave me an upper hand. They were all about just about as good. But with these, I was better. I heard things where they are, just more precise. And of course, then you have the extra things like a little bit better build quality, a comfort that of course is subjective. Great for music, just way more cleaner, more detailed quality, and obviously the significantly best microphone. So that, I think, covers it clear enough. I don't know what else to say. For action games, this would be my first recommendation out of those 4. Value, this one. And overall, even though noticeably more expensive, for people who want more than just casual gaming, who want to be better in games, who want just the upper hand because they play so much, this should be considered. And for some reason now, I don't have really anything to say about the Cloud Alpha. Instead of just it's a well-balanced all-rounder, but it's just not quite a step up, since it's more of a sidestep that I expected, especially over the Cloud 2. So, yeah. That's it. I hope it was helpful, and if not, then not. But let me know in the comments, and yeah, let me know what you think. Otherwise, have a nice day. Bye.